Hello, everyone. This is Dory Clark, and we are here with a special LinkedIn Live that we are doing with my guests, Ruth Gotian and Andy Lopata. They are the authors of this book. It's the Financial Times Guide to Mentoring, and it is awesome. Yeah, we've all got copies. It rocks. And today we're going to have a great conversation about the mentoring process. And so if you have questions, please type them into the chat box. We're excited to hear what's going on and what's on everybody's mind. We want to take your thoughts and your questions. Also, you can start us off by, if you're joining us live, type into the chat box and let us know where you are dialing in from so we can get a sense of that. I'm in New York today. Ruth is. Andy, you're in the UK, right?
I am indeed, just outside of London.
Amazing. All right. Well, the first piece out of all of this with the Financial Times Guide to Mentoring, the fun fact that I love about this is that you two collaborated on this book without ever having met in person until after the book was done. That's kind of cool and kind of wacky. Andy, do you mind telling us about that? Like, how the heck did that happen?
Well, there's only one person to blame, and it's you.
Professional matchmaker.
Ruth sent me a connection request on LinkedIn. I would probably say 2020. Well, no, definitely say 2020, late 2020, because I don't just accept LinkedIn connection requests. I have a more selective process.
You have to earn it.
You have to earn it. So I replied to Ruth and I said, and she has a very impressive LinkedIn profile. So I was very interested, but I said, what leads you to reach out? And she said, I saw Dory Clark holding up a copy of your book, Connected Leadership, on LinkedIn. And I said, okay, how well do you know Dory? I see some other people we share in common. How well do you know them? And we had a great chat. And we arranged an hour Zoom call. And we just found we had a lot in common. Off of the back of that, Ruth invited me to join a show that she was running on Zoom through the pandemic. At 8 o'clock on Monday night, 8 o'clock New York time, so 1 o'clock in the morning for me. So I came on a couple of times.
That's and dedication, we got to know, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, they were fascinating conversations. I met some great people through it, and Ruth and I got to know each other better. And when I kicked off my podcast, which you've both been on, the Connected Leadership podcast, Ruth guested on a regular basis for the first year. And so the relationship built and built and built, so that when I knew I wanted to write a book on mentoring as my next book, I had actually 4 collaborators in mind, 2 in the UK, 2 in the US, but I felt that 4 was too many to write a book with. So I invited Ruth to collaborate, and the other 3 have all contributed to the book. And yeah, it just felt natural. So those people who say you can't build a deep relationship at distance, it's not necessarily true. I understand it. I used to say it, but it's not necessarily true.
I love that. That's fantastic, Andy. Thank you so much. And we are here with Andy Lopata and Dr. Ruth Gotian. They're the authors of this new book. It is the Financial Times Guide to Mentoring. We're taking your comments, your ideas, your questions about mentoring. We want to say hi to some of the awesome folks who are tuning in from around the world. Patrice is hanging out in London. She's near Andy. Tim is in New York.
Oh, you know who Patrice is? She wrote the book Reverse Mentoring, and she was the reverse mentor for the CEO of Virgin Atlantic.
Unbelievable. Hey, good job, Patrice.
And appears in the Financial Times Guide, of course.
That's right.
I love it. We get some ringers here. Tim's in New York. Scott's in Memphis. Maksud is joining us from Toronto. Rob's in Western Mass. Anne is saying hi from Nairobi. James is in Reno. Julie's in Cape Cod. We love it. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad to have you part of this great conversation. Now, Ruth, a question that I have for you. One of the first things that comes up around mentoring, I mean, everybody would like mentors. This sounds like a great idea. Why not have some wise person helping you and looking out for you? But what are the big mistakes that people make? What's sort of the number one thing that we need to really be careful of, or that people screw up in the process? What do you think?
I think people they become fangirls or fanboys, and they say, this is a leader in my field. Let me go up to them and ask them if they could be my mentor. Now, you don't go up to someone and say, will you be my husband, my wife, my friend? Why in the world would you ask someone to be your mentor? That sounds like another job. And I don't know about everyone who's listening, but no one has time for yet another job. So I think people are just really approaching it all wrong. Yeah, they may have the expertise, but they may not be the right fit for you. And you certainly should never outright ask them to be your mentor.
I think that's so wise. And literally just yesterday, I got an email from someone that I hadn't ever met
Yes.
saying that to me. So yes, it can
And
feel
what was your
very
reaction?
intimidating. My reaction was, my God, who is this person and what do they want? So yes, it feels like a very intense ask, which I think people don't quite understand the gravity of it. So
That's right.
yeah, that's a really great point. We're here with the authors of the great new book. Look at this. It's the Financial Times Guide to Mentoring. Dr. Ruth Gotian and Andy Lopata teamed up for this. And we're so happy to welcome friends from around the world who are joining us. We have Vatsal joining from India. We've got Jose Luis from Colombia. Saparsh is in Seattle. We've got Mohammed from Dubai. Lori is here. We've got Tokar from Charlotte. We've got Ryohei from Japan and Hans from Switzerland. Jose's from Angola. We're so happy to have all of you. So Tim had a really interesting question. Andy, let's give this one to you. He wants to know, where did the Financial Times connection come into play? Like, we all know the Financial Times. It's nice, it's handsome, it's pink. What the heck does it have to do with mentoring? Let us know here. What do you think, Andy?
Well, the Financial Times has a series of business guides, and I've been published by Financial Times Prentice Hall as well. So they're a publishing imprint. They're part of the Pearson Group, which is one of the biggest publishing groups in the world. They published my third book, Recommended, How to Sell Through Networking and Referrals. Ironically, or not ironically, I was referred to them to write that book. And when I knew that I wanted to write a book on mentoring as my next step, I knew there wasn't a Financial Times guide too, and I felt that it was something missing in the suite of books. So I reached out to the editor who knew me. I timed it well. My previous two books had just both been category shortlisted in the Business Book Awards the night before, and I knew Eloise had been there, so I probably timed that quite well. And it was quite a long conversation because they have the Financial Times Guide to Coaching, which only mentions mentoring once, which is to say mentoring isn't coaching. But we still had to build a business case to say there is space for a book on mentoring when you already have the book on coaching. But that was the link. It was a very clear, focused approach from me saying, if I'm going to write this book on mentoring, I want it to be in that Financial Times series of books because they don't have it, and I think it belongs there. And I had the track record with them and the connection with them already.
Yeah, great points. I love that. And Franz is joining us from the Netherlands. Hi, Franz. We have another LinkedIn friend joining from New York. So I love all of this. Now, Andy, you were mentioning something just a moment ago that I think is interesting. And Ruth, I'd love to have you expound on this, which is the difference between mentoring and coaching. Sometimes this gets conflated. Sometimes it gets confused. How do you guys think about what the difference is and how that all works?
Well, I think, first of all, let me start by saying the labels don't really matter because I think we have enough labels in our lives. One more is not going to make a difference. But we do need to understand the difference between the two and understand that we really should have both of them in our lives. So a mentor is someone who sees the long term. They see beyond the horizon that you can see for yourself. They are able to see strategy. They have vision. They know how to get there. They will save you time. They will tell you who will have your back. They will tell you who will stab you in the back, all of it. And they will give you the scaffolding to make sure that you can get there. Now, the coach is usually for a finite period of time, usually to work on one or two or three very specific skills. That's what it's for. So where a mentor you can have for years or a lifetime, a coach is usually more short term. Now, there's one difference, and this is one of the great parts of our collaboration that we learn, is that there are some differences between the US and the UK, which leads me to believe that there are differences in other parts of the world as well. In the United States, in North America, generally, mentors do not get paid, while coaches do, and the good coaches get paid well. In the UK, business mentors are paid. There's actually an entire society of business mentors. So there is a little bit of a difference. But in short, mentor long-term, coach short-term.
Super interesting. Thanks for that clarification. I love that. And a question has come through from one of our LinkedIn users. Andy, I'm gonna throw this one in your court here. The person wants to know. This is a nice LinkedIn user, and they want to know. We're cutting off your nose here. Sorry about that, but now we can all see it there. That's exactly. They want to know, can you share some of the most impactful strategies or practices that you've used to foster meaningful and effective mentoring relationships, and how have these approaches evolved over time? In other words, give us the hacks. Give us the quick thing. If you want to be a good mentor, Andy, what's the most important one or two things that we need to know?
Yeah, I mean, it probably is right to throw this my way, as professional relationships is my bread and butter. There are a lot of different things you could look at here. Just two I'll pick, and they're quite closely related. One is the importance of small talk, and actually creating an environment where you get to know each other as a human being. And not just based on a job title and transactional conversation. The more that you feel connected to your mentee or your mentor, depending on where you are in the relationship, the more the conversation will flow, the trust will build, and you'll open up and you'll warm to each other. So I think the building time for small talk is really important, but getting the balance right. So I found myself I get on really, really well with my mentor, and we've got a lot of shared interests. And we had a mentoring meeting over lunch, and we didn't get talking about what we needed to talk about for too long. So my suggestion from there is, okay, we can go for lunch, but before or after, we meet in your office for the mentoring session. So I think a clear distinction between when it's small talk and when it's transactional or agenda driven, but you need both. And the other thing that is linked to that is vulnerability. Which I've also written about, but I think it's very relevant to this, which is why this book followed that one. And the key point there is that both parties need to be willing to be vulnerable with each other, because a lack of vulnerability, in other words, ego getting in the way, is a massive blocker to progress. So I would say if you are a mentee, you have to be willing to open up completely to your mentor and not worry about impressing them. If you can't share with them what you're struggling with, they can't help you with it. But if you're a mentor, there's Harvard Business School research that shows that if you are vulnerable and you share your challenges and your struggles, when you communicate, your message is more resonant. So if you're vulnerable, people are more likely to listen to you. And we know that we learn as much from people's mistakes as we do from their successes. So as a mentor, ego can get in the way as well. And you can want to impress your mentee. You need to not let that get in that way.
You know, can I pick up on something that Andy said? And this is why I was so excited to partner with Andy. Look, we've all been doing mentoring for a very, very long time. I've led programs, I've written about it. And one of the things that we know is 61% of mentoring relationships happen organically. So everyone who's waiting to be matched up with a mentor, or you're waiting for the perfect mentor, not going to happen, probably not effectively. 61% of those mentoring relationships happen organically. And it's just like what Andy said. It is those conversations. It's who you gel with. It's who you connect with, who has your best interest. And that's why I knew, look, we could talk about academic theory all day long. I'm an academic, happy to do it. Usually not too many people want to hear about it. But to figure out how these relationships can really just prepare you to have those incredible mentoring relationships, that's what it's all about. And that's why I think our partnership worked so well for this book.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. And this is Dory Clark. We're here with the authors of the new book. It's the Financial Times Guide to Mentoring. It's Andy Lopata and Dr. Ruth Gotian. And I want to say hi to some of the amazing folks who are tuning in from around the world. George is joining us from Roswell, Georgia. We have Tankiti from Bangkok who's joining us. Julie is here. We have Agnitsa from Belgium. We have all kinds of wonderful folks tuning in. Please feel free to chime in with your questions. We love to hear what's on your mind. And a great one came in. Ruth, I'm going to send this your way from a LinkedIn user. They want to know, how do you balance providing guidance but not giving advice. Now, I mean, obviously a mentor, I guess, gives some advice, but you don't want to be like, do this or else. That's probably not too helpful. So how do you sort of strike that right balance of being in service of the mentee? Would love to hear your perspective on that.
Right. Remember, your mentee is not your mini me. They are not here to replicate your career. They're not your legacy so much as they are their own person. And you are there as a mentor to help them create their own legacy. So, yes, you can give them all the advice that you want, which is great. Make sure it's tailored to them, not you. And as the mentee, what I want the mentees to do is say, I heard, mentor, everything that you said. I implemented steps 1, 2, and 4. I did not do 3 and 5 because now that shows that you listened to what they said, you heard what they said, you evaluated your options, you didn't think it would be the right fit. But the mentor is there to give you that guidance. It's up to you what you will use and how you will use it. But here's a word of caution to the mentees. If you're never using the guidance the mentor gives you, why are they your mentor?
That's a very good philosophical question, Ruth. I love that. That's great. We're here with the authors of the Financial Times Guide to Mentoring, and we want to say hi to some of our amazing folks tuning in from around the world. We've got Purvi joining us from India. Jennifer's in Arizona. We have Rosa, who's joining from Ontario. We have, we're making a shidduch in real time here because George Freeman, I'm in Roswell too. You're showing up for us as a LinkedIn user, but George, you can go in, you can make a new local friend. That's amazing. We have Hassan from Morocco and Mariana from Reykjavik. We love seeing all of you guys here. Thank you. And a great question came in. Andy, I'm sending this one to you. This is from Subharsh, and he wants to know, how do I balance the need for results with the well-being of my team? This is always one of those tricky needles, the thread here. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think the first thing is to understand the connection between the two, and to understand that they're not separate entities. If you push too hard for results at the cost of well-being, in the short term that might work out, but in the long term, the results are going to diminish over that period of time, and it's not going to be sustainable. So when you're focused on the well-being of your team, then you are going to ensure better results over a period of time. Add to that if your team see you invested in them, if the team see that you are focused on the well-being, then their productivity is going to go up. They are going to be working with them for you rather than just doing what they're told. So I think the question is interesting. It's probably worth a podcast on its own. There's a whole series of directions you could go. But for me, it's about not seeing them as totally separate things, but actually understand using the term, they have to be in balance, and that one feeds off the other. And if the scales go too hard one way or the other, then you're going to have a problem. Mentoring, to bring it specifically to this topic, is a core part of that, because one of the key things that you need to be aware of with mentoring is, as a team leader, you should not be trying to be their mentor as well. You can be an informal mentor to them. You can be part of their mentoring team to a degree, but they need someone that they can turn to who can be objective. I talked about vulnerability in my previous answer, who they can be vulnerable and honest and open with, including about what's happening within the team and with you. So if you ensure that they have someone they can turn to and speak without fear of judgment and without fear of it weighing against them, that's how you can really invest in their well-being and get those results that you want.
Love that. That's great. Andy Lopata, he's the co-author along with Ruth Gotian of the Financial Times Guide to Mentoring. We want to say hi to Brian, who's joining us from Newbury, England. Alex Alfaro is here from Costa Rica. Elizabeth's in Uganda. And Anupama is a new mentor. She says, congratulations, Anupama. She's in Vancouver. So that's great. So Ruth, I have a couple of questions for you from our illustrious audience here. It's a two-part one. The first one is, Anupama wants to know any good books you suggest. I mean, of course, there's your book, which is wonderful.
Of course.
But besides that, what are some good ones? And then a secondary one here we can weigh in on is, Jennifer wants to know, will you do a sequel about how to be a good mentee? My daughter's just entering the workforce and has asked this question. So what are your thoughts about this, Ruth?
All right. We have so many resources. Yes, definitely our book, but we put them all in one place. So I don't have to depend on my memory for all of them. And I don't need to accidentally omit anyone. If you go, we have a website, mentoring-guide.com. There are resources of a ton of books, programs that you can look into, organizations that you can join. So it's all right there. There are so many good books. Anyone who reaches out to me privately with the type of mentoring you'd be interested in, because there's so many types, right? Mentor, mentee, mentoring teams, mentoring for women, right? So many. Just go to mentoring-guide.com, check out all the resources. Now, Jennifer's question. Can you put that back up?
We can
Jennifer
put
was
that
actually
back up.
there when Andy and I met in person for the first time in London in November. She actually arranged a brunch, and that's where we met. Will we do a sequel, How to Be an Effective Mentee? So I don't know, Andy. I don't know. Should we?
I'll be honest, and hi Jen, by the way. I don't think we need to be honest. I'd be interested in feedback, but the primary focus is for mentors. We do have a section there for mentees, but the reason the section for mentees is shorter is you can take most of the advice to mentors and reverse it. It's about what happens well in the relationship. So I would advise anyone who wants to be a good mentee and make the most out of their mentoring relationship, get that value, is this book will help you.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you. Thank you both. I love all of this. And we have a comment from Pervy. I tried to reach out to you for greeting story, but your assistant told me you could not accept requests anymore. I'm so sorry. It's true. There's a limit on the number of your LinkedIn connections. Who knew, right? It's so annoying. But anyone here can follow me on LinkedIn, and you can get updates. And if you can follow Ruth and Andy as well on LinkedIn to get all of their updates about mentoring and many other things. So sorry about that. I wish that LinkedIn would increase the number of connections you're enabled to have. But in the meantime, you can follow and you can subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter. Do you guys have a LinkedIn newsletter?
Amazing. Your newsletter is not just the LinkedIn one, but also the other one. Really, I recommend that everyone read it.
And as if by magic, it comes up on screen. Perfect.
not even planned. We just got our little thing there. But thank you. That's great, and I appreciate all of that. So we have some amazing other questions that have come in. I think this is really great. So Andy, I want to give this one to you. So Agnitsa, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, our friend from Belgium, she wants to know, how do you constructively cope with disagreements or discourse or different values between a mentee and a mentor? That's a tricky question. How would you approach that, Andy?
I think it's a great question, Agnieszka. I hope I've got that right. I thought I would have a go-to. I think it's a really good question, and you will get those challenges, and not every mentoring relationship will work, and you both have to own that from the beginning. So I would actually suggest that when you first meet, often a mentor and mentee will meet for a chemistry meeting initially. How do we get on? You need to set your boundaries, and you need to set your clear objectives and say, how will we know if this is working or if it's not? And ideally you will behave as adults, and you will say, what are our exit ramps? How do we come out of this without hurting the other person's feelings? And if you can have that agreement up front, it will make life so much easier. The second thing is to reiterate something that Ruth said, and that is that as a mentor, you need to recognize that your mentee is not obliged to follow your advice or guidance. That's all it is. So you don't take it personally. I share a story in the book of one of my mentees whose chosen course was something I very strongly disagreed with on a number of levels. And I made my case to her as to why I thought she should go down a different route. I also suggested, she was 17 at the time, I suggested she also speak to her mother about it and get her input, and then come back to me. So it wasn't, you should do this, you should do this. It was, you might want to consider this, go away and reflect on it. You don't have to respond to me now. When she came back, she had decided to pursue what was in her gut or in her heart. It was probably everywhere. And I respected that. Even though it was a route I didn't choose, it's not my life, is Ruth's point, it's hers. So I think that adult, mature approach to it. and then I think it's just about being open in your communication and respectful in your communication and saying thank you. I really appreciate that insight. I feel I need to take a different path. And if you have the right relationship with your mentor, you could even ask for a recommendation as to who might be a better fit. But you can do it without diminishing them. And that's the key thing. It's not about you're the wrong person for me. It's actually, I think I need some slightly different guidance on this. Who would you recommend?
Yeah.
You know who really instilled the idea in me of not just having values, we all need to have our values, but making them part of our work and not straying from that. And that was for all of you basketball fans out there. That was Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr is a 9-time NBA champion, currently the coach of the Golden State Warriors and Team USA for basketball at the Olympics. And he is hardcore all about his values and making sure that everything he does is aligned with those values. And that was also taught to him by his mentor as well. And he believes in this so much, which is why we actually asked him to write the foreword to the book, which he did. So Steve Kerr, 9-time NBA champion, wrote the foreword to this book because even at that level, they have mentors. And that's also something that we really wanted to bring home. You know, we share the stories of some of the Nobel Prize winners and the Olympians and a 9-time NBA champion, because even at that level, they have mentors. And if those people have mentors and are mentoring, why do the rest of us feel that we don't need that, that we're above that? This is really something that everyone should be doing in order to elevate their career.
That's great. We're nearly running out of time here. So I see so many great questions coming in. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to all of them. But Ruth, I want to give you the first pass at this. And then Andy, maybe we'll give you a final word either about this question or about anything else you want to summarize. But a great question came in from Elizabeth. And she wants to know, what advice do you have for mentors trying to support mentees from diverse backgrounds or with different learning styles? So, you know, your mentor is different from you in some capacity. Maybe they're a different gender or race or just they have a different vibe. How do you relate to them? And then also, how many mentees should you kind of realistically have if you are the mentor here? How do you make sure you're not overextended? I think these are really interesting questions. Ruth, why don't we start with you?
Yes. So first of all, if you could put that question back up, because it was a multi-part question.
Yes.
And I think we could do a whole episode just on this. Look, there's value in having mentors and mentees who look like you, but there's also great value in having mentors and mentees who are different than you. It gets you out of your echo chamber and you can learn from each other. And then I know Patrice Gordon is here. She's the reverse mentor. Her mentor was very different from her, and she mentored him about what it was like to be her and everything that she had to deal with. She was also from a diverse background and a woman and more junior, etc. So, look, at the end of the day, I think that we are like a Venn diagram. We all have something in common. We just need to figure out what that is that we have in common. Once we figure that out, we can build the relationship and learn about each other's differences. And you can mentor by telling them, here's something to consider, as Andy said. Here's something to think about for the future. So that's what's so critical. Now, we actually in the book also have a whole section about mentoring people who are different than you. And I don't just mean by gender, race, ethnicity, but also people with who are neurodivergent in different ways, how to mentor them, what to look out for. Now, the number of mentor to mentee ratio, that really varies. And we actually talk about having a team of mentors. So you don't just need to mentor people one-on-one. You could actually, the mentee has a team of mentors around them where they can reach out to different people. Really, it depends on your bandwidth and how many you can mentor well. Because if it's too many, you will turn into a tormentor instead of a mentor. And that is something you want to avoid.
That's a worthy caveat. I love it. Andy Lopata, I'd love to give you the last word here. You can comment if there's pieces you want to add about the question of diverse mentor-mentee relationships or about anything else that we've missed that you'd like to make sure we cover.
Thank you, Dory. Well, first of all, I'm really glad Ruth mentioned the chart we have on mentoring neurodivergence, because I've actually been in that situation where I didn't realize my mentee was neurodivergent, and she had a breakdown in the session. I didn't know how to handle it. So I felt it was so important that we cover that as well. And we have brought in expertise from a lot of different people to try and create as comprehensive a guide as we possibly can. I've seen a number of people have asked in various forms and questions about how do you convince an organization or a person or whatever it might be. Just look at the stats, and we've got acres of stats in the book, but they all point in one direction. And that is the people who are mentored and people who mentor others enjoy greater success in their career and greater happiness in what they do. Organizations who encourage mentoring get great results too. When I'm talking to so many of my clients, predominantly large multinational organizations, one of the biggest challenges that they face is recruitment and retention of key top staff. Invest in those people, enable them to achieve their full potential, whether with you or whether they move on in the industry, because they'll remember your investment in them if you do so. So there's always a strong case for mentoring. The other thing that I will add, if you go to mentoring-guide.com, we have a scorecard there, a short quiz, 15 questions that will help you work out the impact you're getting from your mentoring at the moment, whether you are a mentor, whether you are a mentee. It's a short, fun quiz, but it will just give you some food for thought in terms of some small changes that you can make to enhance the value you're giving someone else, the impact you're making on them, or the value you're receiving from your mentor. So even for those who don't invest in the book, and obviously we hope you do, we still want to give resources to help people make the most of their mentoring relationships, because we know how important they are.
That's amazing, Andy. Thank you so much. Just a few questions here. Lynn says, is it available for replay? Yes, you can visit my LinkedIn page or Andy or Ruth's, and you can watch the whole thing. It's also on my YouTube channel as well. It's archived, so you can watch it from the beginning again and again. So that's great. And one of our LinkedIn friends actually mentioned, I think Dory mentioned in one of her books the idea of having a team of advisors. That's true. In my book, Reinventing You, I talked about having a mentor board of directors. So that is it's a topic that I'm really interested in as well. And so it makes me so happy to be able to speak with Andy and Ruth today about their book. So the book, again, it's the Financial Times Guide to Mentoring. It's by Ruth Gotian and Andy Lopata, our special guests today. You can learn more about the book and check it all out at mentoring-guide.com. Andy and Ruth, we are so happy to have you here today. Thank you for being here, my friends.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Everyone, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you here today. You can hit the share button so your friends can benefit from this conversation as well. And we will see you next time. Take care.